All right, so today we're going to be going straight into webcomic spoilers. If you don't follow it and you just follow the manga, you don't want to be spoiled, you don't have to watch this one. But now that we've got that out of the way, we're going to be talking about Blast's son. That's right, Blast has a son, and his name is Blue. And to help me with this, I got my boys Anime Anxiety and Quirkless Shinobi, newcomer to the channel. What's up, guys?
Hey, yo.
Hey.
So, it's going to be revealed eventually in the manga that the leader, or the number one Neo hero or Neo leader, there's no like official ranking. And at first they said that Blue was the leader, but now we know that he's not technically like the leader since that's fuzzy and we already talked about him. But if there was like a number one ranked Neo hero, just like there is in the Hero Association, like the number one is Blast. Well, in the Neo Heroes, the number one is his son by the name of Blue. So he's kind of like, I don't know, like an analog to, I always thought he was like an analog to Izuku somewhat, or just an analog to like the new wave shonen protagonists, kind of. Like maybe one's parody on that. Because he's like 16 years old, he's super ambitious, he's cute, handsome, and he has some kind of interesting power set that hasn't been explored yet. So another thing about him is that he is one of the, I think the only person in the story so far besides Genos who has seen that Saitama like took a Mai mask and like hit him. Like he put a Mai mask into hiding. And that's going to come back later. But before we go deeper, what are you guys' initial thoughts on Blue?
Well,
Yeah,
first,
oh, sorry. Go ahead, man.
when we first see him in the manga, we don't have, or in the webcomic, we don't really get to see Blast at all. So it's more of a mystery as to who his dad is. But now with the manga, we kind of have an idea of who Blast is, or at least where one wants to go with him.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought like Blue was probably one of the most, I don't want to say out of place. I guess I could say most like interesting additions to the characters in One Punch Man. Especially in the webcomic, just because I feel like he came like totally out of left field, and you don't really know what his real purpose is in the story yet, except for, you know, obviously draw some more Blast intrigue, because that's what gets people excited aside from Saitama stuff. So I don't know, I've always been pretty interested in where one wants to go with this character, because, you know, it's still kind of vague what, you know, how he really feels about Blast, like what's like their direct connection, like is he his biological father, like adoptive, you know, or something. It's just, you know, there's so much to unravel with him. I feel like he's definitely one of the more interesting characters in the whole series to this point.
Yeah, so that is an important point to be brought up here. It's still not like officially confirmed that he is like the absolute biological son of Blast, because the only thing that we're going off of is him saying it. And the Neo Heroes kind of corroborating that. Now, most likely he is the son of Blast because they have, like, the same eyes. And we didn't know that at first because Blue was, like, revealed first? No. I guess Blast was revealed first. I'm thinking about the timeline. This was, like, 2021. So I guess Blast was revealed and then Blue came a little later. But regardless, they both have, like, the same type of eyes, which is interesting. We still don't know what that means. We still don't even know what Blast is fully. Like, is he like an Esper or something? He seems to be more so of like an Esper in the vein of like the Mob Psycho Espers, less than like what Tatsumaki and Fubuki and Psychos are. He's like the physical powerhouse kind of Esper or whatever. Still unknown, but it seems like whatever he was is Blue somewhat inherited it, because aside from the eyes, Blue is extremely powerful. I mean, he's number one in the Neo Heroes for a reason. I mean, partly because, you know, he has the name recognition on his side, but recently, in one of the chapters, he, like, one-shots a dragon. And, you know, there seems to be, like, a divide on this. Some people think, like, all the power that Blue has is coming from his suit. And it's like, he seems to have somewhat of a similar suit that the other Neo Heroes do. I mean, maybe it's buffed up, but is it buffed up enough to make him, like, that strong? And if he is, then why not just give all of them that? So I'm thinking, like, he has to be giving somewhat of his inherent power to that suit to make him that strong. And it also has, like, a limiter on it and all this stuff. So I do think Blue is extremely powerful, and it comes from, hereditarily from Blast, or whatever is going on with him. Now, another possibility is that he is like an android or a cyborg or whatever. They just made him to be like the false son of Blast to like draw him out because, as we talked about many times, Drive Knight is probably the leader of the organization, and we saw that Drive Knight has interest in Blast. But the one thing that makes me not think that is how would they know what Blast looks like? Because he's been, so secretive. Like, how would they know what his eyes look like?
Yeah, and like that's really like the only real connector to say like, yeah, they're biologically related in some way is because of the eyes, because it's a pretty unique like eye design. They look like almost like gears in a way. And what importance that has to like their overall powers is yet to be seen. Maybe it's just kind of like an indicator, like, yeah, this is his son, and this is like the easily identifiable way. But I mean, with One Punch Man and the different ways that like people are enhanced and modified, like cyborgification, the weird stuff now, coming up with the Tsukiyomi in the manga, like it's becoming more and more likely that there is things like cloning or some kind of like biological engineering to where there might be like this interesting storyline down the line where Blue was like a clone of Blast or something, and he's not like the conventional son of his, but he really kind of is because he's he provided the sample or whatever to clone him in a way, and it'd be pretty fun to a pretty fun rabbit hole to go down if this kind of stuff starts getting introduced into the story more, because really when it comes to like engineering humans and stuff, it really only went as far as like what Dr. Genus did at the beginning of the series.
With something with Blue is that when anyone who really runs into Saitama in the story, especially if they get into conflict with him, it's a pretty major arc overall for their character. And Blue being so tied to Blast in general, and Blast not being revealed in the webcomic, him having this direct tie to Saitama, especially with how shady the Neo heroes are. Like, we see something like this with Garo. When Garo runs into Saitama, it kind of changes his whole outlook on life. And right now, Blue is attempting his best to be the number one and replace his quote-unquote dad.
Yeah, I do like the conflict that Blue has with Saitama because it's like misguided. Blue kind of has his own opinion of Saitama. Like in chapter 134 of the webcomic, like he confronts Saitama in front of one of his protests with the Hero Name Victim Association. And we get this kind of meta line, which I love that one does here. He's like, hey, I know you. Are you some secret weapon that isn't on the registered hero list? Is your intention to stay hidden and only leave behind results, building up some kind of mythos? Which is hilarious because that's literally what Saitama is. But then he's like, that method of operation, you're not trying to become the next Blast, are you? Because, that's what I want to do. And now we know... recently, we know what's going on with Blast, and I do think that this is going to be explained in the webcomic in just a big, long, like 2-chapter exposition dump, where Blast will reveal the god stuff and the cubes and everything, and that just explains why he was out of Blue's life, because we found out that happened like 20 years ago. That's when he first came into contact with God and all that stuff. And given that Blue is 16, it's like... It's kind of irresponsible of Blast to make a kid and then just peace. I'm gone. Just good luck.
It's also interesting to think that he saved Tatsumaki before he even had Blue as a son, if he's his biological son.
That is true.
Oh yeah. That lines up. Right? It'd be like what, 17 years. So it was like the year before he technically would have had him, right?
So, like, at some point between there, he started a family for reasons we don't know. And it really depends, I guess, on how different Blast is going to be in the webcomic from the manga. Because in the manga, we see him have, like, these space Avengers he's off with.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird, like, especially bringing that up. Like, since he started that, like, the timeline's getting built now. He started his journey, 20 years ago, saved Tatsumaki 17 years ago, and then, allegedly had Blue, the year after that. So that's why I kind of, I don't want to say I buy in too much into it, but like I definitely think the whole like cloning theory holds some weight, just because it makes so much more sense than if, like, you know, he just randomly in like the middle of his like god hunt started a family for no reason and then just kind of moved on. And I mean, it'd be pretty easy to lie to Blue and say, yeah, this is your father and he abandoned you as a baby, you know, something like that. But
That's very true.
you know, it's that's why I kind of think it might make more sense for the cloning side of things. But again, you know, like it really is up in the air. You know, there's like so little we know about, you know, their whole relationship in general that it could, you know, anyone's guess is as good as anybody else's.
Yeah, I mean, and cloning, you know, like you said, Dr. Genus has already established that that is a very real possibility. Even though Dr. Genus isn't necessarily like on the side of God, God does know about Blast. It seems like Blast is like God's like number one most wanted because he knows him by name. Like he kind of like respects him somewhat. Like it doesn't seem like God even acknowledges most people as like, I don't know, beings, just more so like things that he can use. But Blast, he's like, you're Blast, and like everything he's doing in this war is kind of going against him. So if he orchestrated some way to have Blast cloned for him to ultimately be a disciple, I think that would be interesting, because I do think that Blue for sure is going to be controlled by this suit. I mean, that's like the end goal for all the Neo heroes here. Like the suits that they were supplied, which is definitely coming from the organization, is going to take him over, and he's going to be forced to fight. And I guess that's how Blast could come into the story.
That's an excellent point, actually. Blast, if he is his biological son, Blast is going to show up to save him, because I don't see why he wouldn't. This guy can dimension hop if he has any powers similar to the manga.
Right. Yeah, and I mean that's actually a really good point, because it starts raising the question, like, why is Blue even, like, why was he even brought into the Neo Heroes? You know what I mean? Like, I know he came kind of just, it seems like he kind of joined despite his dad, you know, because it's like the other hero organization that's like trying to one up the Hero Association at that time. But also, like, I don't know, I just feel like it's kind of a weird coincidence that like this new Neo Heroes organization starts and then boom, here comes Blue joining it. Like, it, you know, it kind of has to get cleared up, like how, like who reached out to who, how, you know, exactly how did that go down and what their intentions are with having him on board, because we saw that with like other Neo leaders, like they have such weird names. In Felsenave, I think, and I think in Zaditz, like the rich guy and the cult leader guy. Essentially, they brought him in just to like bring in numbers and bring in money, and you know, and it's not like directly said, but it's kind of heavily implied that, like, I don't know, I forgot which is which. I think Zaditz is the rich one, right?
Yeah.
He's the one that got taken out by that like meatball monster, which seemed to be kind of controlled because it was like only paying attention to him. And then after that, they get cyborgified, and then they're pretty much just like easy pawns at that point. So it does seem like at least some of the members of the Neo leaders got brought in to, you know, be used for like their organizational purposes and not so much for their skills. So it'd be kind of interesting to see if Blue is one of those people that like is brought in to be used for a certain specific purpose, and more than likely it is going to be tied to Blast.
Especially with how idealistic these guys are, most of the Neo heroes are just being manipulated in the first place due to just like tragic life events. Unlike the Hero Association, which kind of pulls you in with money and fame.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that dichotomy there between them. But going back to who reached out to Blue, is actually Fuzzy. It's one of the first things it's one of the first things that Fuzzy says. He says, the Neo Heroes founder and leader who reached out to Mr. Blue. So that also raises a bunch of questions. Like, how does he know, you know, that? Because how would you know that? And also what we talked about in one of our last collabs, it was like, you know, we recently found out that, or at least it was implied, that Gearspur was hiding in plain sight too. Like, he suddenly, you know, flipped a switch and he just was a bad guy, or, you know, like it's implied. So, I mean, we were fooled. At least I know that I was, for sure. So maybe Blue is playing us as well, and he's just going to have this switch flipped and is like, haha, I was actually, you know, under their thumb the whole time.
True.
And we could stop.